Every day for decades, many people have sat in front of and interacted with the television set using a brand new piece of consumer technology called the computer game. Using a series of electronics, children can now experience a level of entertainment never seen before at the likes of television programming. Ever since the inception of this technology, the software for these games have been sold as separate pieces of physical software, but rapidly this market has been changing into an all-digital format, leaving some consumers in a cloud of confusion. Like this gentleman, for example. What seems to be the problem here?
Well, Buster, I bought this piece of software for my child recently, and the system doesn't even want to accept it. What am I supposed to do now?
Well, this is one of the newfangled digital-only systems. Using the power of technology, many manufacturers refuse to put a slot for software.
Oh, I see. It's one of those newfangled things, like women being able to drive. Told you.
Well,
what's next?
Speaking from the viewpoint of a collector of things, especially video games, it is very sad to see physical media being somewhat phased out. With things like movies, music, and television shows, it's very easy to see why. What's the point of buying DVDs or Blu-rays anymore when it's even easier to find the same movie or show on a streaming service or digital storefront? Music is the same as well, and it's even harder to justify physical music with anything other than a simple, I just think it's cool, because most music is on streaming services, and with things like SoundCloud existing, it's easier for smaller musicians to get recognized. Video games, on the other hand, are a completely different case. A lot of people out there are against the mere idea of phasing out physical video games, but there's also been efforts from game companies to phase physical media out. Whether it be digital-only consoles, releasing games only through storefronts, or releasing download codes in game cases for some fucking reason, it's pretty obvious that game companies are trying to make physical games obsolete, or at least making physical games more of a novelty than anything.
So, what better thing to do than to suck off our corporate overlords and discuss the disadvantages of physical video games, and to evaluate if they're really going obsolete?
Now, I have to warn anyone that's gonna get mad at me in the comments. I don't want physical games to be phased out. Again, I am a game collector, and I think it's important to keep physical games alive as long as humanly possible. I love going to stores and picking things up, and buying a digital game just doesn't nearly give the same experience as buying a physical one. I just want to provide a different look at this situation. Basically, playing devil's advocate, if you will. Or maybe I'm just talking out my ass and I really love corporations. So, first thing to get out of the way, companies benefit more from digital games. Not even just the console manufacturer, but the developer, publisher, and really any party involved with bringing you, the consumer, the product. They all benefit more from a digital purchase. Basically, say you walk in a GameStop and want, I don't know, Fallout 4 for the Xbox One. First, let me give you a weird stare, and then let me tell you that Bethesda and Microsoft don't get 100% of that purchase.
How do you think the corporations are going to feel about that one?
I know, pretty weird thing to tell a consumer, but a portion of that purchase goes to GameStop, and if you bought it used, which, why wouldn't you, then all of the money goes to GameStop. Now, if you buy Fallout 4 in the Microsoft Store, again, let me stare at you weirdly, but all of that goes to Microsoft and Bethesda. The reason I provide this little bit of info is to give a reason as to why companies have been trying to ditch physical games. On top of that, games do cost money to produce. While it isn't terribly expensive, millions of these copies get produced, and that racks up for sure. Plus, it costs more for not just console manufacturers, but also the consumer to have a disc drive on the console. That's why the digital-only alternatives to consoles are usually cheaper than the normal console, mostly by prices in the triple digits. The PS5 Digital Edition is a whole $100 cheaper than the standard one. The only difference as far as I know is the removal of the disc drive. The Xbox Series S has less powerful specs than the Series X, but it's like $200 cheaper than the X, being the same price as a base Nintendo Switch.
And now there's digital-only physical games, essentially a physical game that comes with a download code and no actual physical media. Literally just a waste of money, plastic, and happiness. These things are the reason why world hunger exists. Don't debate me on that. I know I'm right.
And all the legroom that digital games grant developers, like Jesus Christ, some games are going above 100 gigabytes, which is the maximum capacity for PS5 discs, and I'm assuming that the Xbox Series X discs are the same thing. Even back in 2019, the reboot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare currently sits at over 200 gigabytes on PC. Also, yeah, PC has basically been all digital since Steam really, picked up steam. I own physical PC games, sure, but the newest one I own is the original Modern Warfare from 2007 because it was like $2 at Goodwill and I thought it was pretty funny to have. What does removing physical games mean for you, the consumer, though? Well, for starters, it's more convenient. You don't have to go to a store to buy the game, you don't have to wait a day or two to get it in the mail. You go to your console, you buy the game, and you're done. Yeah, you have to wait for it to download, but my Xbox makes me install any game I have on disc, no matter what game it is. Even my original Xbox titles, I still have to download those to the console before playing. Games are just becoming too big to store on the disc itself anymore, and with things like day one patches and updates, you're gonna have to download regardless.
And these things are breakable unless you really care about the condition of your physical games. You could be this 9-year-old dumb f*** left all of his Wii games out of the case, sometimes on hard wooden surfaces. Face down. I've had plenty of games as a kid just stop working on me because of the way I treated them, and even for collectors, it's not 100% guaranteed that your game is going to be in great condition. Like, oh, you buy Sega PC Puzzle Pack, and oh, won't you look at that, somebody used it for American Psycho reenactment night.
Now that we have that out of the way, let's discuss some reasons why physical games should be kept alive. For starters, the experience. Sure, I hate leaving my house for any reason, but going to a game store is a wonderful experience, especially for me because here in New York City there's like 5 local game stores for every GameStop. While I like going to GameStop somewhat, people who run local stores are just nice to talk to. They're like GameStop, but without the weird shit from corporate, begging you to pre-order games and to join memberships, among other things. While I'll still go to GameStop, to me I have to inconvenience myself to visit one. And for what? To buy a $6 game for the Xbox only for them to ask for my ID because I wanted a game that's rated M? I get that they legally have to do that, but the last time I went to GameStop, they wouldn't let me buy Dead Rising 3 because I was quite literally 3 months too young to buy a game rated mature. Like, come on, I'm not 7 years old asking for Crack Smoking Simulator VR the experience, I just want to buy Dead Rising 3.
I just bitched about something that was supposed to be positive.
Regardless, the whole experience of holding the game on the way home, opening it once you get there, playing a game for the first time, that can't be matched with buying a digital game. Buying a digital game is like a reverse Blue Balls kind of thing. Disappointed at first, but then later on it becomes good. Plus, having a few physical games can give you a disease called Game Collector Syndrome, where all of a sudden you feel the need to buy Yoshi's Cookie for the Super Famicom. Also, physical copies of games you can't play anymore are funny. Like having the disc to Battleborn is a funny idea because there's a game you can't play anymore, but that's another reason why physical games are great. Preservation. To me, saying you collect games for preservation is kinda dumb if you're not collecting games that may not be preserved yet and dumping the files. Like, ooh wow guys, I have to buy Super Mario Bros. / Duck Hunt, I love preservation, when really you're probably the 200,000th person to have that same thought. But preservation is important, and a lot of times that can't be done without physical copies. Digital games can get delisted left and right, some notable examples being Hideo Kojima's PT and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. When these games are gone, they're gone. Unless a re-release happens, there's no way to play these games if you delete them from your console, though Scott Pilgrim actually did get re-released in 2021 to modern platforms, which is awesome. Also, game collecting is a huge hobby nowadays. I'd say it's bigger than ever, and to ditch physical media would be to ditch people who collect video games. Sure, there's older consoles, but what about people who collect for current gen? It's always been inevitable though. Since the 7th gen, you can really tell publishers stopped really putting any effort into the packaging of games. Some games really only come in with just the disc and a blank background on the inside. Some 8th gen games do have goodies in the case, artwork on the inside of the cover, or both, and pretty much most Switch games have something on the inside. As a game collector, it really is sad to see physical games slowly being phased out since they're not like movies and music. The same way you enjoy those nowadays, video games can't be enjoyed. Take cloud gaming for example. It works, but you need a decent internet connection for it to be tolerable at the very least. Not only do you lose the same experience as picking up a game at a store, but you lose that sense of truly owning your games. Having something tangible, holding it, putting it in the console, that's gone with a digital game. Physical media is just something that I don't think should be phased out at all. Like, ever. And if it does, I'll probably be sad. There's companies like Limited Run Games that release digital games physically, and while it's a nice gesture and they do definitely put care into their packaging, I think their business model is dumb. What's the point of making physical versions of these digital games if you're just going to release it in a very limited quantity for a very limited time? That is a bitch for game collectors. Making games artificially rare makes absolutely no sense to me. So, here's my open letter to game companies regarding physical games.
Fuck these things.